I'm Stephen Bailey. I'm a data engineer at Whatnot, and I drink a whole pot of black Folgers coffee in the morning. Just the cheap stuff, but in volume.
What's going on, everybody? We are back with another MLOps community podcast. I am Dimitri Os, one of your hosts, and today I am joined by none other than Mr. Ternary Data himself, Mr. ODSC keynote speaker, Mr. Wyoming rock climber, aka the fundamentals of data engineering author, Joe Reis. What's going on, dude?
How you doing? Good to see you.
I am excited because usually it's like I get someone like you that I get to interview, but today Christmas came early, man. We got to interview Stephen, and you are here right by my side, making sure that this interview it hit all of the right notes.
Yeah, it was great jam that we did. So liked it a lot.
Dude, this was killer. I'm saying it. I said it before, but I'll say it again. This may have been the best one. This may have been my favorite one, just because of the clarity. And I used 3 words to describe what I felt like this conversation was. It was philosophical, it was actionable, and it was a third word that I can't remember right now, but it was a big word that was fun and smart. And of course, I can't remember it to make me seem absolutely like an airhead. But what were some of your takeaways there, Joe?
I mean, the thing I really like about Stephen is he just has, I think, a very innate sense of practicality to him, and it shows both in the discussion and in the the workflows that he's implemented and whatnot. So I think that's something I always appreciate. Also being, I would say trying to be more pragmatic than not, or whatnot, pun intended.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was definitely a breath of fresh air.
Oh, it's so good. And it was so cool how he walked us through what Whatnot is, in case there's anybody listening that does not know. And then he went through how he got to build out the data platform, what he does, where he sits. And I just thought one of the key points that he brought up was how it is so clear to them what their priorities are. Like he said, priorities come to him. He doesn't need to go sort them or search them out because they bubble up, and he needs to just grab them when they cross his path, because otherwise he'll have problems down the line. That was a huge takeaway, and it's got to be nice to be able to have that clear of a vision at a company, and as a engineering team and as the data platform team, to know what those priorities are and know what you need to keep in mind when you're building. And then just how he sits in the middle, and not him only, but the whole data team and the data platform team, they sit in the middle of so many different stakeholders. And we mentioned this a lot. When you're working with data, you have to loop so many different people in, but this is next level. I mean, the different people that he talked about that he has, he's got the machine learning engineers, they've got the data scientists, he's got the software engineers, then trust and compliance, then the CEOs or the board. All of that there's so many different things that each one of these stakeholders wants, and I love the way he breaks it down.
Oh, for sure. And the thing is, the setup is really simple too, right? There's moving parts, but there's not a lot of complexity, right? And it seems like, as far as we could tell, everyone seems aligned and knows the priorities and knows the goals, and I think. And the other thing I found cool was the just a sense of move uncomfortably fast. I think this is a good mantra. Doing what's 80%. It's good enough, right? And I think all too often, that in the data world, especially, we tend to have a lot of navel gazing and the strive for perfection, which is great, except that you do miss out on the opportunities in front of you, right? And if if everyone's clearly aligned with the priorities and you all can move fast together, I think it's a great setup to be in. You're set up for success. That's awesome.
Yeah, so true. It is a great setup to have. And a lot of people probably know Stephen from his Airflog blog post or Substack that he put out. If you have not read that, I highly recommend it. We'll leave a link to it in the description. And he's also got another great one that we didn't even get into, but Joe, I know you posted this in the notes on the document that we were looking at. It's like, what exactly isn't DBT, where he goes through and says what you should and shouldn't be using DBT for in his ideas, and why DBT shouldn't be an orchestrator. And so it's so cool to see how deeply he's thought about the orchestration layer and how it can be done differently, how he would like to see it. And who knows, maybe he'll end up starting a company around that someday.
I think it'd be really cool. The thing I like about him too is he's in Ohio, right? So he's landlocked, and he's not, I guess, for better or for worse, polluted by all the noise in the data world, right? So I think having that kind of remoteness also gives you a sense of clarity that
Purity.
Yeah, it's very pure. Yep,
it's that purity,
like the driven snow in a Columbus morning in the winter. Yeah.
Are you busting out poetry on us, Joe? I didn't.
No, I would not inflict that on people. That's terrible.
Oh, well, for anybody that has not read those blog posts, go and read them.
Yep.
For anybody that has not bought Joe's book yet, go and buy that. The Fundamentals of Data Engineering will change your life. It
will change
incredible.
your life.
It will change your life.
It'll
in the
make
way
you
that
rich.
You do.
It'll make you famous.
It will change so many different things. Just trust us on that one. And if you are not already joining us in the over 30 cities where we have MLOps.community meetups happening, I recommend you do that. If you're not subscribed to our 3 different newsletters that we put out, we got 2 weekly newsletters and 1 monthly newsletter. Go jump on that. We'll leave a link to that in the description. And if you're not in Slack, join us, because there's all kinds of great conversations happening there. Last but not least, I want to give a huge thank you and shout out to our sponsors of this episode. Wallaroo is a platform designed to be a control room for production ML to facilitate deployment, management, observability, monitoring, and optimization of models in a production environment. They cater to AI teams, large or small, working in projects organized in a way that works for them. Teams of data scientists, ML engineers, DevOps, business analysts, access and work in integrated fashions in their environments via SDKs, UIs, or APIs. Get your hands on and grow your skills with Wallaroo by downloading and installing their free community edition. We'll leave a link to that in the description. At least go check it out. That's the least you can do. They sponsored the episode. They sponsor the community. They are big supporters, and we got to say thank you to them. You can check out their free community edition right now. So without further ado, let's jump into it with Steven. All right, dude, what is Whatnot?
Whatnot is a live stream auction site. It's kind of like a Twitch meets eBay. And so we have sellers going live all hours of the day, and they are selling whatever they're passionate about. A lot of times it's collectibles like sports cards, Pokemon cards, other trading card games, but we're branching out a lot into other categories like fashion and clothing, and we even have some of the Whatnot type categories where it's just like whatever you bring to the show, you can sell. And so we have people opening return pallets from stores and selling what's in those. I bought some returned mail the other day. Got a Harvard medical school
Diploma.
primer on knee healthcare. That was great.
Interesting.
We've got a
So
guy
is it like
who
QVC meets Wayne's World? Is that kind of?
This sounds like my place. I need to hang out there more, man.
It is really sneakily addictive. You kind of get on there and you start browsing, find something you're interested in, and then you just hang out for a while and see what people are buying. And a lot of the sellers are very, very engaging, and they kind of gamify the retail experience. Well, where you buy one thing and then they'll throw in another thing, or they can kind of deal make on the spot.
I'm just watching a clip on it right now. I'm watching Tuesday Valuee with Cactus, and I think I'm just gonna spend the rest of the podcast just watching this clip here, so you guys can carry on.
It's more interesting.
It's very interesting stuff.
I'm out, dude. I'm done with this.
What is it? Morning Mixers with Jonah. Well, it's crazy.
That's incredible.
Wow.
We just released a new feature called drops, where you can kind of like enter for a chance to win something, and sold someone a seat on the Voyager. What is it called? The Virgin Galactic flight.
No.
So we're sending someone to space.
Interesting.
Basically.
What? Wait. What?
What do they have to do for Whatnot in return? Do they have to pitch a product while they're flying into space, or
Nope. Just be a part of the experience
and just live.
Just live through it. Make it home.
Yeah, that would be a PR disaster, actually. So wish them well. Anyway, dude, we're talking about Whatnot because you work there and you're doing data stuff there. Can you give us a little bit of a breakdown on what you're doing at Whatnot? And I wanted to use it.
The other question I have, though, Demetrius, before you get to that, is do you have, I guess, a seller profile on there? Are you selling stuff on there on the side? I just want to check that out while we're talking. So
yeah. My username is DataCat. Give me a follow, like and
there
subscribe.
We go. Oh my God, I'm going.
It's a side hustle.
I'm actually I do sell occasionally. We have a big focus on dog fooding and whatnot, and so one of the ways you dog food is by actually getting on there and selling. It's a very humbling experience. Every time I go on there, I just bleed money for an hour, because I have no following. So my first sale, I bought 25 new bestseller books, and was like, this is gonna be great. People are gonna come in and get really engaged, and it was just me selling brand new books for $1 for an hour and a half. So the bonus for viewers is they get great deals. You can stay in the game.
Do you have a Hall of Fame of the wildest stuff that you've seen on there?
It's every month there's something there's something new that's crazy that gets sold. We've had several stunts where we've had we've done giveaways where we offered someone to play Post Malone, who loves Magic the Gathering card game live. So we gave away a slot to do that, and we did this whole live stream of him playing one of our Whatnot users. We had a sports card seller crack open the most valuable card in the world, which is called the Triple Logo Man. It's LeBron. It's a LeBron James card that has a patch from three of his NBA championships jerseys, the Logo Man on the shorts, and it's all on one card. And the card sold for $5 million. So that was open on a Whatnot live stream earlier this year.
Whoa!
It's just wow. I think one of the things working at Whatnot, one of the things you learn quickly is how passionate people are in these different niches of the collectibles world. People will drop thousands of dollars on a Pokemon stream just on a Wednesday night, and it really speaks to not just the the cards themselves, but to the community around it, because that's what's really fun about Whatnot is you get in there, someone's opening a pack, you pull a cool card, and it's not just you getting that and being excited about it, but it's everyone else is whoa, can't believe you got that, that's amazing, that card's so cool. And so it really is a social experience.
Dude, that we need to get some people stoked on the MLOps community stuff that we're doing.
Exactly.
We got live stream goals.
Live stream model training. I think that's where it's at.
Yeah. Not exactly a spectator sport, but it's like watching. My dad was way into triathlons, and so I went and watched him once or twice, and that's about all I got in me to. It's not the spectator sport that you would hope it is. You just watch people whip by once, and then you're like, all right, see you in 2 hours, especially if they're doing Ironmans and stuff like that. So anyway, we came to talk about the Whatnot data and just your data thoughts in general, because you've been putting out so much awesome material, man. When it comes to the data layer in machine learning and in analytics, data engineering, you've got some quote unquote thought leadership and hot takes, as I would classify them. And maybe it's because you are in the middle of the country that you don't get polluted. Your mind doesn't get polluted by all of these hardcore addicts on each of the coasts. But let's just like break down. You're working at Whatnot. What are you doing there? And what has your journey been to get there?
Yeah. I live in Ohio for those who haven't catched it. And I think there's something to that. I think being in the middle of the country, you kind of, you're at least a little insulated from the buzz around you. No one around me
Joe
even
agrees.
knows what.
Yeah, I live in
Nobody around me
Utah.
even knows what data engineering is. So,
Yeah. Well, in Demetrius, you live in a village in the middle of Germany, so
people don't like machine learning. What? So I feel you. I think we're all in the same boat on this call.
We're the same village. We're the same bar.
Yeah,
we're
the same
whatever.
village,
So,
one of the really great things about working at Whatnot is we kind of built out the whole data landscape quickly in protoform. So we had like a data platform that was distinct from the analytics team, that was distinct from the machine learning team. And so we've been able to build with a bit more specialized mindset than just having like a single team that was, kind of doing everything a little poorly. And we've kind of grown into this distinct, responsibility set. So I'm on the data platform team, which is orchestration. It's the key pipelines, really getting data from especially our main application systems and making it available for operational ML analytics use cases and things like that. So it's I get to jump into the individual domains in the company, trust and safety and the product experience occasionally, but it's very much more about enabling the rest of the company to do those more advanced use cases. And it's been great. I've really loved working at a product first company that was that had a lot of people who were very experienced. I mean, I think I've been in places where I was the smartest data person in the room, and that is okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But being in a place where there's just so many talented engineers who are just like have a direction in mind, like they've seen it done at scale, and they can kind of build from the start towards those that future state where we have really mature event logging, mature analytics, mature experimentation, mature ML models, and like being able to be on the ground floor and build up to that has just been an incredible experience. Really, really great.
Dude, so I have to ask you, because I've been putting together a bunch of different best of the year, since we are kind of at the end of the year, and I wanted to create like the MLOps.community awards. And so I was going through a bunch of Slack threads that were contenders for the best of the year Slack thread. And one of them that came up, and it really makes me think about what you're talking about, was almost like it was a bit of a discussion around how much should you be thinking about the future? How much technical debt should you be putting or taking on just to get something out there and do it dirty so that you can validate something? And how much should you really just try and like bulletproof it from the beginning, even if it makes you a little bit slower? And there's a certain few people in the community that are very opinionated that you should never just do something dirty because it's always going to catch up to you. And then there's others who are saying, just get it out there and see. You don't want to, like, there's plenty of projects that have been absolutely incredible underneath the hood that never saw the light of day because by the time they actually got out, there was nothing there in it, or the like goalpost had moved. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's like one of the fundamental tensions in the data world is between business value and building like a platform and sort of like thinking holistically and systematically. And I think you almost can't do both at the same time. If you have your one hat on, you're like solve a problem hat on, it's really hard to do like the system level stuff perfectly. You want to do it as well as you can, but you really do want to move as fast as possible. I think at Whatnot, one of the things that's really set us up for success is that we divided the analytics side and the data platform side at the beginning. We hired 2 people. They had 2 distinct job responsibilities. The data platform side was much more focused on like getting a machine learning product out in production. And the analytics side was much more focused on like the board meetings. And those 2 concerns are pretty distinct. I think the machine learning side, you have to have like really high quality systems and pipelines that are like rigorous, they're defined as code. Whereas the analytics side, none of that really, it honestly doesn't really matter. As long as you're getting like the right, you're able to answer the right questions and you have good definitions and you have something that's fairly maintainable. That could just be like a single layer of DBT models. Sure. So I think my sense is you want to get to value as quick as possible, but if you want to build in processes where you can go in and think holistically, and the way we've done that at Whatnot is we have this data platform team that's distinct from the lines of business. It's kind of separated a little bit. And so we can think about, how should we improve orchestration? How should we, create like improve reusability? How can we improve the developer experience and those things? But it is sort of a secondary concern.
Walk me through this. I mean, when you started at Whatnot, and it was very early days with the data team, what were some of the initial questions that you wanted to answer in order to show that you were on the right path?
Yeah, I think so Whatnot is live stream retail, so it's kind of got like all your typical retail metrics like number of orders and things like that. But then we also have these product engagement metrics like how many shows are people watching? How long are they staying in shows? What's their product analytics journey? So I'd say those are the 2 sets of metrics that are most important for the customer journey at Whatnot. And so getting those exposed to the end users is or to our internal stakeholders is concern number 1, and making sure that those are exposed reliably and consistently. But then it kind of forks from there. I think as soon as we had those base metrics, we started wanting to know how can we operationalize this for a recommendation algorithm in the product. And so that became the ML use case. Recommendation, like can we get people into a feed that is being driven algorithmically? Because that is your flywheel for additional additional experimentation long term. So the first version of the recommendation was like a huge goalpost to get to. And then on the other side, I'd say we picked a couple of the most highest value use cases operationally to start drilling into. And that was like trust and safety, for example, where you've got, because it's live streams, you have all these potential ways that people can kind of abuse or ruin the experience for others. And so being able to expose data quicker, but also create kind of a language for us to understand, like, all right, what does it mean? Like, what is a problematic activity? Like, how do we define that? And then how do we get that in the hands of agents? I would say those were the 3 top priorities for data. And they all have very different flows, right? Because the analytics flow is fairly simple, like kind of like a couple DBT models, and you got to have that consistent, and integrate it. But then the ML world is its own world, kind of once you have the raw data. And the operational world too is its own world with its own stakeholders, and the flows that stakeholders use for looking at like trust and safety data is very different from the flow that a board member would use for looking at a dashboard.
Dude, awesome. That's so cool. And so can you break down real fast? I mean, I do want to get into some of the articles that you've written, and you said the magic words of orchestration earlier, which almost made me jump in and say, let's talk about Airflow, but I didn't. I bit my tongue, and I want to go into the idea of, you mentioned the recommender system, and recommender systems are something I've been digging into pretty deeply recently. And I'm wondering, like, what's your recommender system look like? What is the stack? How do you set that up? And how do you make sure that, like, I imagine it's real time. You want to be recommending things to people continuously and making sure that it's the best recommendations. And so I mean, I want to start with just like what it looks like, but I also want to like hear about these kind of edge cases, and how do you know that the recommender system is actually recommending things that are interesting and it's not just recommending the most popular stuff? Like, what is that? Like, how do you go through all of that fun questions too?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. First of all, and I think the recommendation system is so interesting to me. It's the first time I've worked with a team that's built a recommendation system, and first time I've really been exposed to it. I think it's I think one of the fascinating things about data is how much you can know and also how little you can know about so much. Like I feel a recommendation system is pretty I don't want to say straightforward, but it's like a clearly like a data application. But it has so much nuance in it because it's such a mature data application that it almost has become it almost is its own thing. And I think it's I guess just a sidebar. I think it's really interesting how data products or data like use cases tend to do that, whether it's computer vision or they kind of, as soon as they grow to a certain point, they kind of like branch off as their own distinct sub problem. But anyway, I think the big thing, so at Whatnot, the thing that distinguishes our recommendation system and a lot of our like product serving infrastructure, whether it's recommendation, we now have like other use cases for serving data into the product, is it has to be real time, and it has to be very low latency, and it has to scale to very high workloads. So the way we do that for most of our real-time applications is we use a tool called Rockset. And so we'll have like our offline data processing, and then we'll dump data into a Rockset real-time analytics layer, which basically has extremely fast lookups. And you can also write SQL queries, so it makes it pretty easy to maintain and manipulate over time. And it exposes the results of those queries to other services through an API. So the main application can just query it through an API, get the result set, and filter it down to certain users. And that works really well. It's the latency is very low, and I think most importantly, the speed of iteration to get a new endpoint up and running, it's very low. We can just, as long as we can reliably dump the data into a certain spot, we can kind of add it into our repertoire of things to serve. So a lot of our recommendations are actually served that way. So we'll pre-compute the recommendations, dump them in there, and then they're ready for the system. What goes on in like the training aspect, I'm actually not that familiar with. And I think that's one of the one of the distinctions between like a data platform engineer and an ML engineer or whatnot is data platform, we're responsible for a lot of the infrastructure and what's going on, like from a data movement standpoint. But what happens like within a step, a lot of times there's like so much more sophistication than it's really necessary for me to dig into. So I actually don't know what we're doing in many of the recommendation system cases.
Interesting. Like, how do you coordinate with the the ML teams to make sure that everything is flowing well? And what's the overlap with that team?
Yeah, that's one of the projects that I've been working on recently in the last 6 months. We had to migrate off of a tool called Spell, which got bought, into SageMaker, the SageMaker world. And so SageMaker is Amazon's like ecosystem of ML related model functions, and so it sort of, the SageMaker workflow determines kind of our interfaces. What we want to provide as a data platform team are the tools, basically like copy paste tools where people can configure a Docker, essentially like a training job in SageMaker. They provide a Docker container, they provide a shell script, configuration in the form of hyperparameters, and then they can just copy paste it into our orchestrator, Daxter, and then kick that off on a schedule very simply. And so a lot of the work of the data platform team was in setting up what are those different steps that data scientists can use to launch these training jobs, create models, deploy the models, and then just making them very easy to reproduce for different variations of the task or of the model.
You mentioned Daxter. One of the things we wanted to talk about in this episode was your article on your Substack called Airflow's Problem. So, you switch sides now? You a Daxter dude now, or what happened?
Yeah, we are on Daxter.
SageMaker pipelines. What do you got under the hood now?
You have everything. I feel like that's the state of the world right now. You have a little bit of everything. You got some DBT Cloud. You got some SageMaker.
That's so true. And that's why it's such a headache. That's why I think,
It's such a headache.
Yeah, your Substack rings so true with so many people. But anyway, I'll let you answer
You
the
got a
question.
whatnot to describe like all your data tools that you have?
That's the stream, dude.
Yeah.
That's what you could do.
Data platform and whatnot. Yeah.
But I jumped in. I didn't want to derail that, but hit us with what it looks like. You're using Daxter. Are you also using any of these other ones? For example.
Yeah. So our philosophy is the orchestration layer, that scheduling layer, should be centrally managed. So we don't want DBT Cloud to have a bunch of like GUI scheduled runs in it and just have those running independently, and then having like SageMaker to have their own schedules in there. We don't want our ingestion pipelines to be running on like their own schedule that's built in their own tool. We want a single like pane of glass for scheduling, so that we can kind of hook things together, make sure that SageMaker jobs run after DBT jobs, and if the DBT job takes an extra 4 hours for some reason, like all of those training jobs shouldn't then be delayed and have to be rerun and things like that. And those are very it sounds like a very simple problem, but it's actually
But
very
it's 2022. Yeah, it's too advanced, right? Like we've gone too advanced, and that's what makes it challenging.
Yeah. And I think where I was when I wrote that article, Airflow's problem, I was setting up a lot of this infrastructure, and we had just reached this point as a team where we were starting to have lots of data products and data applications in different places, where we had some jobs that were starting to run like trust and safety related policy violation sensors, where they'd like check whether something had happened and send a Slack alert. And then we had all these training jobs that were being created, and they didn't look exactly the same. So you had like one might have a training job and one might have another like post-process job, and then it has to get put into another system. And then we had of course our DBT and pipeline stuff. And there was just it just felt like chaos. And when I looked at the orchestrator landscape, I looked at, Airflow and Prefect and Daxter, and I had previously used Argo workflows, which is a Kubernetes native orchestrator. And so I was fairly familiar with the space. I just felt like the orchestration layer was the right place to solve this chaos, right? It's the only tool that's so tightly integrated with all of the different pieces of the infrastructure, and the only tool that knows about all the pieces that could possibly provide like an interface to managing it. But when I looked at Airflow, and really even when I looked at Daxter and Prefect and like just orchestration in general, it just didn't feel like we were solving that problem of like being able to see all of the things that are out there in the world, and then much less being able to like help manage and make them work together. I do think that Daxter and the Elemental team are starting to push in this direction through their use of like asset declarations. DBT does this a little bit because it has their references. So like if you add new models in, they should fit into the graph. And the problem with DBT, of course, is that it's just a subset of things. It's not going to manage your model definitions and stuff. And then actually Airflow too, like they've started to add open lineage and really start trying to connect the operations that are happening from a processing layer to sort of this like map of what you have and what you're managing at the data level. And I think that's the right approach. But one of the I think that's probably like where we're moving towards.
And so if I understand this correctly, it is you saying because the orchestration layer basically has its tentacles in everything, it should be doing more, not less?
Yeah, that's what I think if we're going to solve the problem, like if we want to be able to intervene and manage the system as a whole, then there's got to be something that has, at least as much tentacles as the orchestrator does. Because you look at something else like, another tool that's kind of like this is catalogs. So data catalogs, they are the one tool that actually, I think, treats the data ecosystem in a way that is as broad as it is. Data catalog will probably index like Google Sheets for you if you wanted to. So they'll go to Google Sheets, they'll pull in your machine learning models, they'll look at your BI tool, they'll look at your database, and they'll like pull it all into one place. But they can't do anything about managing any of that stuff, right? It's just visibility. It's adding some metadata on top of it. It's giving you kind of like a search engine on top of your catalog. The orchestrator, on the other hand, if you're pulling that Google Sheet into Snowflake, it knows about both of those things, right? And it can do things to both of those things. It can create that like map between them. And you're doing it in a way that actually lets you intervene if you want to, say, stop pulling that in, or only pull it in once a month.
Interesting. So what was walk me through your decision criteria. You're using Airflow, you wrote a nice article about it, then you're not using it. But you also mentioned Astronomer too in the article, if I'm not mistaken too. Is this maybe a viable option? I mean, why did you decide to go the route that you did?
I did POCs, like personally did POCs with the Prefect and then Airflow itself. We were on Airflow for a while, and Daxter as well. Daxter was ultimately what I really liked about Daxter was their focus on the engineer. I felt like of all of these tools, the Daxter had the best, the most clear focus on the data engineer as a persona. And it was coming out like they had just released branch deployments, which is like basically every time you create a new PR, it'll create a sort of distinct environment for your code. And you can do like dev and testing there. They had CI/CD actions out of the box. And it's not to say like any other tool, like there's CI/CD for Airflow, of course, like GitHub Actions all over the place. But I think when your vendors are a little bit like a part of your team to some extent, especially when you're smaller. So I knew I was going to be leaning on someone to help us get stuff stood up. And I definitely saw that energy from the Daxter team. But I also think one of the things that came out of that article that I wrote was, it's a bit of if you're going to go with a vendor, you are thinking like you are making a partnership at the more of the platform level. Astronomer, for example, is their core value is being able to make it really easy to deploy Airflow and to deploy it multiple times, and then also to aggregate metadata and like observability metrics on top of those Airflow instances. And so it's not just like the framework, the orchestration framework of like, what's the syntax for creating a DAG? It's really about how are you deploying this thing and monitoring the infrastructure and then getting metadata outside of it? How are you sending those Slack alerts and making sure that like they're going to the right people, especially as the complexity evolves? So that's, it's almost like it's not a decision in many cases. Are you going to use Daxter or are you going to use Airflow? It's like, what are you going to use at the level above that to help coordinate these things if you're going to grow? Like we know our trajectory. We're planning for a lot of growth. We're planning for other teams to be deploying, Daxter workflows and plugging into this orchestrator. And so that's where we knew that was like the problem we wanted to solve.
I love the human design aspect of that, how it's like a bit of an abstraction above that and thinking about this holistic view, not just like, oh, this tool gets the job done in the best way. Well, what is that best way? Define best for me, because is it the fastest? Well, not quite. And you're looking at it in a much different way. And it's funny you say that because I was at a meetup in Berlin, one of the MLOps community meetups a few months ago, and there was a data engineer there, and he was talking about how he was so excited about Daxter because of I can't remember what the exact feature was, but it was like it's data self-aware or some shit. I can't remember the
Yeah, that would
name
make sense.
of it exactly. And so I'm just going to take this moment to say Daxter does not sponsor this episode, but if they want to, Pete, hit me up, man. We're here. We got the availability. This is what, like, they can clip this all they want and get some good footage for their social medias. But anyway, Joe, I know you had a question, man. I don't want to.
The Daxter team's
cut
cool. I
you
just
off.
want to say that too. Nick Schrock's a friend, so you know, and again,
There we go.
You know,
Nick,
same with the
hit us up.
Prefect crew is friends too, and you know, my company, we're Ternary Data, we're actually partners with Astronomer, full disclosure. So you know, and I would say you know, dotted line to Daxter as well. So I ain't got a dog in the fight either way. Yeah, what you an interesting thing you brought up though is you know, sort of centralizing the orchestration layer, which makes a ton of sense. It's sort of the hub that you know, traffic, I guess maybe the air traffic control for maybe a overused metaphor, but but what, you know, you mentioned too, you want other teams to start you know, deploying Daxter and you know, have that level of control. One thing I want to know more about is how do you train and share knowledge you know, among different stakeholders on these platforms? Because it would definitely seem like you'd want to at least have like sort of a common body of knowledge or competencies in order to be productive. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a challenge. So I think there's two levels to it. The first is just you know, like education on the platform, right? How do you write a Daxter sensor and then like plug it in? One of the things that I really like about Daxter is it's created to for the jobs that you run to be modular. So we have like 4 repositories that push jobs into the Daxter central scheduler, and they're managed independently. So it's intended to be used that way, where you have like different environments and different Docker containers and different requirements. I knew as soon, like, because we had data science workflows, machine learning workflows, I knew we had to support all sorts of insane Python package requirements and stuff like that. So there was never going to be like a single base image, right? That you just use this and plug it in and it works. So we have this kind of heterogeneous set of jobs that get pushed to Daxter. And that is just a training issue, really. This is, you're just coming up with a playbook and a template for how you do it, how you create the Docker file, like making the, you know, image creation process as simple as possible. The more challenging part is making processes aware of each other and knowing what can be, like, allowing other teams to know what can be reliable. This is like a lot of what data mesh, you know, I think is intended to make clearer, to create processes whereby one group can publish data products to other groups, and then other groups can do whatever they want with them, right? And that can be very challenging because we have our DBT project, and that's really where all of the majority of our data pipeline work is done. But it can be kind of unclear to end users, like, all right, which model should I select from and which ones are not subject to change? So a lot of I'd say that we've done 2 things here that have made our lives a little easier. One is we've decomposed our one main DBT project into like marts, sub-marts that have different classifications. So like we have like raw data marts, we have a set of core like Kimball modeled marts that we're building out now. We have a couple of other like product, like use case specific marts, and then we also give people scratch spaces to build their own like kind of ad hoc stuff. And so there is a bit of a choose your own adventure opportunity available for end users. They can choose from the raw data. They can get some, you know, like our core dimensionally modeled data that we like have team guarantees around. They can pick more highly vetted stuff that's been published by like our machine learning team, for example. And there's an implicit knowledge that like I'm getting data from this source, rather than just selecting from a random snowflake table. So that sort of classification of like what are each of these things and who owns them is really important. And then the second piece is Daxter. We've moved all of our stuff over to Daxter's assets framework, which allows for the jobs themselves to be linked to upstream dependencies. And so when someone is writing a machine learning job, they actually reference the DBT table by name that job depends on, and it creates an explicit dependency on that table. Now, whether you like how you trigger that machine learning job can vary. You can make it sort of like sensor driven. So like if the upstream table changes, that's when the machine learning job runs. And that's very nice. But at least by having that asset framework, it makes it, you can go and look at that machine learning pipeline and then see exactly what jobs it's referencing. And it allows me as a data platform person who doesn't really have perfect insight into things to more quickly jump in and troubleshoot things if they go wrong, and also to give them some sort of advice. So it kind of creates an interface for us to support other people simply by having them declare like what specifically they're relying on. We can kind of say, don't do that.
So many times I've tried to ask like how people solve that problem, because that is one of the cruxes that you'll get between maybe it's data scientists or data analysts and platform teams. And it's such a headache to know, all right, if I'm changing something or if I'm iterating on some kind of data, how is that going to affect everything downstream? And to know that, all right, this has been claimed by these projects or this model or whatever it may be, then you have an idea of like, all right, great. Now, if something is broken or if somebody comes to me and says, hey, why isn't this working? Then you can just troubleshoot it and you can go into it and say, oh, maybe this is why. So it helps you get to that end state much faster. And I really love hearing about how you implemented that. It's so cool. So, all right, Joe, you got any more questions before I jump to a few meta questions on the Airflow blog post?
Go for it.
So I just want to know, like, why do you think it struck such a nerve with people when you wrote this Airflow blog? Like, what is it that, well, I mean, it's a Substack. I keep calling it a blog, but same, right? And what is it that, like, that got people, because it created a lot of buzz. First of all, a lot of people really liked it, and then it was on like Hacker News for a few days. It was on the front page of that, and there was
Congrats
a
and
great
condolences,
discussion.
by the way.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, I think what really struck me personally was like, as a writer, to get on the top of Hacker News, like I didn't even realize it happened at first. Like for like 20, like maybe 20 hours, right? So I just published this in my pajamas at 9 a.m. on a Friday, and then like it doesn't feel
then
any
you went
different.
And did the whatnot stream and bought some
and then I went and sold some Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it struck a nerve because I think I caught the feeling that a lot of people have with Airflow, where it's like you feel like you're a little frustrated, but it's fine. Like Airflow is like good. Airflow is great, and like it solves the problem of orchestration, and it solves it pretty well, and everybody knows about it. But there's so many people that are like a little bit frustrated, or just enough frustrated that they want to, like, they really want to talk about it. So I think just just critiquing Airflow, I think is going to strike a nerve. That's what I found out. But also just the sense that like Airflow is so inevitable in the data industry. I think this is really what like what I came down to in that post was Airflow is so inevitable that I think it stifles the conversation of what that tool there could be, because it has defined the space so so completely for the last 6 or 7 years, right? I think the way we the tools that we use inform the way we think about problems. And the way that Airflow is created is it's created as like pipelines, individual DAGs. And so you tend to think of your world as like a set of discrete processes that run independently of each other on a schedule, and they're idempotent, and they like run on they backfill and things like that. And that's the way engineers start to think about the problem. But if you look at something like DBT basically creates this graph. And, you know, there's all like the ease of developer stuff, but like to me, what is special about DBT is it puts you in this mindset of like managing this graph of data assets. And some of them are managed by DBT and some of them are like exposures, but like ultimately what you're thinking about is you're thinking about how data is moving from the point A to point B. And that just, it makes you build in a different way. And so I think that's really, that sort of completeness of Airflow's, like the way Airflow is modeled to the problems we're solving, is I think what struck such a nerve.
It's kind of like the Java of the data world in a way. Like, I think everyone wants to hate on it, but it's good enough for the job, honestly. And it's not like you know, I know you see some hard numbers on this, but I can't tell that really Airflow is suffering from any decline in installations, for example, or popularity. Sure. Right? It is what it is. I mean, it's captured the mind share, you know, and that's every team I talk to too. It's kind of like they want to explore other options, but inevitably they go back to just using Airflow and just making it work, I guess, because like you say, it is good enough.
It's good enough, and people know it. So I mean, the fact that you can hire a data engineer and they know how to use Airflow is like, that's great. That's huge.
Yeah, that's speed. That's very worthwhile, right? Because you can get someone up and running like that, and they don't have to learn a new tool.
I think, like, you look at what astronomers doing with it. They bought Open Lineage and are integrating like lineage into the product, and they're starting to build some of that monitoring, like the higher level monitoring, and into the product. And maybe they'll come in and really improve the way things, you know, the speed at which you can like deploy a data platform and kind of the scope that it can address. But I also think Airflow is Airflow. Like Airflow is they're not gonna like change very much in the next 7 years. I would almost like get rid of the value, the big value. They'll smooth out the corners, they'll improve the UI, but
I mean, all they need to do is just pay attention to what, you know, Prefect and Daxter are doing and just make incremental changes. Just that, you know, they're the incumbent base, so it's like all they need to do is just tack on stuff just to stay somewhat, you know, wherever they need to be. So it's an interesting race. I mean, but then again, I mean, they're so much that further ahead. You know, they came out years before any of these other platforms did, and so.
Well, I think you brushed over something that is so important, and it kind of opened my eyes in a way, which was saying like it's been this way for so long that we haven't been creative in thinking about the solution. It's like we've gotten complacent and said, these are DAGs, these are how we run DAGs, and this is what it is. And then I just think about all of the subsequent tooling that is based on that theory, and that's how you do things. And really, if you're thinking about it in a different way and you come with something totally out of the box and you say, like you mentioned, okay, DBT has a graph way of looking at it. Now that brings a whole nother perspective into what could be the next iteration of this if we were to just scrap everything and start over today and we never had heard of DAGs, then what would that actually look like, right?
Yeah. I think one area where it drives me crazy right now is the ML world and the data world. So like I would say Airflow is kind of like traditional data, you know, data processing world, and then the machine learning world is not necessarily like the speed is not any greater. You just have all these offline training jobs. That's what most things happen. But what's different there is that they have this the machine learning models have this sort of ontology of what is happening at each step and what's getting deployed. So it's not just, you know, this processing job runs daily. It's this model is getting retrained on a certain basis, and then we're going to take action based on what happened in that last retraining. And so and then when I, as a user, want to look at it, I want to look at that model and that model's history. I don't want to look at like the last couple dates, et cetera. It's like what I'm thinking about is I'm thinking about the model, and everything, like all of my language is geared around that. And it's incredible. Like, I think one of the reasons the machine learning world has like gotten so chopped off, especially from an orchestrator standpoint, is because of that difference in looking at things. It's not just like a DAG that's continuously loading data. It's like you want to think about the model, and you want to think about whether the model's been deployed, etc. And so what ends up happening is you have to build a new orchestrator just for machine learning models. And I would love one orchestrator or less, like I just love it to be easier.
Yeah.
Honestly.
There's been too much VC money that's poured into this space for that to happen anytime soon.
It's fair. Next cycle.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: how do you interact with the software engineering team?
We are implementing an event bus, like Kafka, Kafka streaming solution, and the data platform team, not me, but someone else on the team has set that up, and has been the point person setting that up. And so we really see the data platform team as an extension of the engineer, like the core stakeholder there, and the people we report to is the engineering organization. In some way, we are kind of like an interface, like a queryable, high volume data interface into the engineering organization. That's our primary affiliation. And so, especially with the event streaming project, we are taking the lead in setting up the schema and the data contract and data quality, infrastructure for not just making, like, not necessarily enabling what events are going to be going through, but tracking them across projects, across the different clients. And I think that when I think about data, what I really think the purpose is oftentimes is to take data from one domain and give it to others. And so events are an interesting example where within the organization, we already have these discrete domains of like client side, different client operating systems. We have the backend services. We have a couple of different backend services. And so our role there is just to make sure that we are building a set of events that anybody can use. It's like any of the engineering teams can use in a reliable way. It's kind of like that public infrastructure of the team.
Dude, so many different pieces that you're servicing, and thinking about it, and just how you're in the middle of all of this. You're right where the action is.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a lot. It's a lot to keep track of. And I think one of the tensions that we see the data platform team experiencing is just trying to keep up with everything that's going on. Like, we are really pushing to allocate all of our effort towards the highest impact use cases, and then letting the other things just work themselves out. And that was not true for my experiences at previous employers, where the data team had high visibility, but like it wasn't always clear what was the highest value and highest impact thing. So we pursued a lot of things that didn't end up being that useful. At Whatnot, because so much is happening, if we don't get to something quick and solve it well enough, then that thing either just takes on a life of its own and it's like gone, it dies, or it becomes something that like becomes a bit of a mess that we then go and have to clean up. So the priorities come to us a lot
they
more.
Sort themselves out.
Yeah.
It's funny. Joe told me last night. What were you telling me, Joe? It was like data monetization. You had something funny that I found hilarious.
I don't know. I probably say a lot of hilarious things about modernization. So, I mean, it's just one of these things where, I mean, it's pretty cool that you're close to the line of value, though, where I think there's a direct reflection between like what you do from a platform perspective and the output of it. I mean, that's because you're tightly coupled to the engineering aspect of it, right?
Right.
I can't remember what I said to Demetrios, but it was Yeah, but I mean, the common trope I've been hearing for the last bit in data is like, oh, we need to provide value and ROI and we need to monetize our data. But it's interesting during the we talked about kind of funding cycles and stuff. Touched on that for a second. I noticed that conversation sort of disappeared from data teams for a bit too, or it was it's just it's like, oh, we'll just provide like things and stuff, and we'll experiment a lot. And I think that's very quickly coming to a halt. So, I mean, and it sucks, because I in a lot of ways I can't blame the people on these teams, maybe their managers or maybe the people that hired them, but I feel like a lot of teams are hired and there's a lot of money sloshing around. So you get something off of Whatnot, you go buy a data team while you're at it, and it's pretty fun. So
you can buy data teams on Whatnot now. This is crazy.
That's a good idea.
Man.
No rules against it.
Yeah.
Start trading data teams and Whatnot.
Yeah. I want to ask one. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna add there. Like, I think I've been that person who was hired into like the first data science role, and there's so much. It's such a poorly understood role, and it can go so many different ways. I think a lot of times it's just people don't understand how to get value out of the data team. Right? They're not being pushed. The people are not being pushed to create things that can be put in directly into the product, or they're not part of the engineering team. They're not part of the sprint cycles. And I really think I could see a world in the future where there is no data team. It's just you're hiring data professionals, and it's just better understood what kind of value they can deliver, and they just do it.
Oh, so true. That's so true. And that's an interesting world to think about. Now, to finish, I know you mentioned before that you have philosophies and whatnot, and you're building with certain philosophies in mind. Can you tell us what these philosophies are? What are some things that you try to keep in mind as you're building? I know when we interviewed the DoorDash folks, they were like very big on making everything 1% better all the time. That was their thing, like just getting 1% better and really chipping away at the big ice sculpture. Or they also talked about like the velocity of machine learning. So how quickly can you take an idea and put it into production? Do you all have like certain philosophies? I can't remember what philosophy you mentioned earlier. I think it was building with scale in mind, knowing that things are going to be big. So that's one, right? What else did you have on there?
One of our more distinctive philosophies as a company is to move uncomfortably fast and to get things in front of customers for the most part, but when it comes to the data platform team, to get things in front of our internal stakeholders, and also to not overthink things too much. We've had a couple. It can be really tempting to try and build the best data model out possible, and like really get feedback from everybody and things like that. But we do try to minimize, figure out the 80% best solution and then go with it as fast as possible and just iterate over time. That does, as a data platform team, sometimes we have to think about that and like really be like make space to have more more thoughtful decisions, especially when it comes to data modeling, because in the data world, like as soon as you publish something, it's part of the infrastructure. It's like laying down pipes and then a city gets built on top of it, right? You're like, you can't go back, and it's a very expensive thing to go back and redo some of those decisions. So we try very, very much to identify what is a type 1 decision, like where we can just walk it back if we need to, and what's a type 2 decision, and treat them accordingly. So move uncomfortably fast is one. The other piece I think that is pervasive is own everything and nothing. In the data platform world, we see a little bit of everything. Like from in the client side and back end code of our application, we have events getting emitted, and we want people on our team to be able to go back there, and even if they are not making commits and changing stuff, we want them to be able to know, why is this event sending in error, not being validated correctly. We need to understand the protobuf schemas and how that gets validated during the development cycle. And we need to know like what is our trust and safety team using from a data perspective. And so we need to have that visibility across the whole system, even if we're not going to manage it tightly. We want to be operating with like an understanding that we can step in and assist any of our stakeholders across the whole platform. And that is a constant learning effort
Dude,
for everybody.
That transparency, man. I love that. That's incredible. Well, like, honestly, I don't want this one to end. I feel like I'm just getting so much wisdom downloaded here.
Same.
This has been so good. But I know you got coral reefs to go and live stream and maybe some guitar playing and whatnot. So I will let you get back to that and get back to your life. But thank you so much for coming on here and teaching us.
Yeah, this was
thanks,
great.
Tim.
Thanks, guys. A lot of fun.
Of course. Thank you.